What's going to be now for the IFR part is so just basically you're running through examples, and of course it's good for VFR people too because there's a bit of overlap. And so I'm going to do, I think this is going to be a vectors to a GPS approach. So I'm going to run through like as you're being vectored and what it'll look like coming down the glide slope, and I'll do an ILS and stuff like that. And that's the way to just running through examples is getting the idea. So again, so we're at basically 2,500 feet here. So what is the airplane doing here? So what modes are active, and then what's going on? What's standby?
Tracking heading, holding up.
We're in heading. We're at 2,500 feet. So what's this? What's GPS mean? What does that mean? It's in standby, but what? So it's just going to intercept. In this case here, what it's going to do is intercept a GPS final approach course. So I think this is. I think we were doing a. Let's see. I forget which one this was. But again, so and the glide path is in. That means we push. So again, if you're busy or something like that, and you accidentally hit the nav button versus the approach button, you know the approach button was pushed because glide path is in there. If you see GS, that would mean glide slope, and so it would be for an ILS approach. Glide. There is a little bit of a technical difference between a glide path. Well, a glide path is for a GPS approach. Glide slope is for an ILS.
Just okay. I don't know why you distinction.
Okay, so then here, so now what's happened now? What do you think the difference between the last screen? What do you notice difference? Different.
GPS is active.
GPS is active, yes. And what happens is now, so we've actually. I wish I would have taken a picture of that down there. But anyway, you can see the needle right here. So we're getting close to, we're almost got it centered, but it actually captured it. So Autopilot, so it's hands off now. So we were flying at a vector, and the airplane turned. It saw the course coming in. It turned, and so now what's active is now it's just waiting for the. Now we're starting to see a little bit of glide slope coming in here. So we're watching this. We're just sitting back here watching, making sure your job as a pilot, when the autopilot's flying, is making sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. And again, super important to keep making sure that you understand what the scoreboard says and what you expect it to say. So again, what we're looking for this to do is, once we're going to watch for this to come down. You still have to put the flaps on and work the throttle and all that. We don't have auto throttles in this thing, so you're going to work the throttle. And you're going to expect, once this comes down, you're going to expect this to flash and then say GP over here. And all this is going to go away because it's not holding an altitude anymore. It's going to start running down the glide path. Again, okay, so now, just like I said, now we're coming down the glide path. We've got the needle center, or centered on the course, the final approach course. Autopilot's engaged. And we're on the glide path, and you can see right there, we're right on the glide path. And we're at 2,500 feet. Let's see what we have here. Okay, so this is in the mist. Okay, so we didn't see the runway. Oh, I should have pressed, I think I have it somewhere else. Anyway, the first thing you would have seen after you hit the go around button, you would have seen GA. And then after that, and I'm going to go through some stuff here, to tell you the exact procedure for missed approach, because it is busy in this airplane, because these avionics weren't all designed as one thing. We have a 20-year-old Garmin 430, right? Now we have what? A 28, this came out in 2018, 2017, I don't know. 2-year-old technology with 20-year-old technology. It's not going to be as seamless, so you have to do some extra work, and I'll talk about that a little bit once I go through some more scenarios. I'll go through the different approaches and then talk about the go-around procedure. So again, in this case here, we see the GA. I forgot to take a picture, but I'll show it in one of the other approaches. I do have it. It's doing go-around mode, so it just means it pitches. Go-around mode is the same as takeoff mode. It just pitches up when you press the go-around button. It just holds the wings level, pitches the airplane up. Again, you're just sitting here watching the airplane. You're watching your altitude come down. You have the airplane totally configured to land. You get to the decision height and don't see the runway. Press the go around, power up, hit the go around button, the airplane automatically pitches up. And you make sure it does this, you make sure the command bars come up, and make sure the yellow bars come right up with it. And if it doesn't, you have your hand on the red button to make sure you hit it, because if you're doing an iOS, you only have 200 feet to the ground. And so it's in go-around mode. We've given it a heading mode at this point here. So, because maybe the first instructions after the missed approach was to go to a certain heading, and our missed approach altitude is 2,500, so it's altitude select and go-around mode. Okay, so that's that procedure. So let's go to some other. This is an iOS. It comes up here. Yeah. These pictures are a little bit blurry, but anyway, again, so we are in heading mode and altitude select and indicated airspeed. Okay, so here we are descending. You can see here, maybe we need to get down to 2,000. I forget what it was in this case here. And we're in heading mode, but being vectored for going down at 500 feet a minute. We know that it's going to capture the 2,500 feet. We're at 2860 or so. And this time we did sync the altimeter with this.
Now you have it vertical speed.
Vertical speed down, yeah.
Down is
going
okay.
Down. Vertical, that's the preferred method. Preferred, in case I'm glad you asked that, because again, we want to climb an indicated airspeed, in our airplane suggest 80, 85 or so. And we want to go down, if you're just being vectored and stuff like that, you don't want to go down too fast. So, especially if you only needed to lose 500 feet. It'd be different if we had to lose, 8,000 feet or something. We want to go down maybe more than, again, so you're making sure, again, we're keeping track of the score. This is going to be the main thing that you're going to look at when you're flying, in the clouds and stuff. We're making sure that we have green needles here, and we have identified our localizer. Of course, you know how to do that. And it hasn't captured the glide slope yet. There's no glide slope. Again, these are redundant. So you could do this whole approach. If this thing died, you could do this whole approach here, because again, we have we have a glide slope on here. We have a course deviation indicator. We're still coming down. We've captured the altitude now, and we're still. So again, in this case here, we're still heading. We're still waiting for us to intercept the localizer, and we're captured on our final on 2,500 to intercept the localizer. Now we're just turning, we're just doing turns, so you can see our heading's different now. That's a little bit better. We've turned again. I guess the northern. I think we were doing iOS runway 13 here. So again, it's in heading mode. So I just showed the different headings here. Now, okay. Now I guess, yeah. So now we set up the approach. I guess we didn't have it set up before. So this is what you're going to want to see. You're going to see localizer. Remember when we're doing a GPS approach, there's just another thing to make sure you press the V-lock button. You see green needles. You see that you press V-lock on the Garmin 430. You see localizer here. You see the glide slopes all on standby. You want to see all that stuff, right? You're in heading mode, active. We're holding our altitude now, and the autopilot's on. And you can see the flight director here. Well, you can't see it in this picture, but you would want to see the purple command bars and the yellow command bars. All right, now we've come around. They're going to say, so they would have already told us to, maintain 2,500 to establish cleared ILS runway 13 or something. So now we're on the localizer now. So we've already captured the localizer. You can see needles coming in here, right? Needles coming in. We're autopilot's on. We're at 2,500. We're still waiting for the glide slope to come in. Again, focusing on all this, flying the airplane and making sure we're seeing what we expect to see up there. Okay, capture the glide slopes come in, localizer center, you're seeing the glide slope come in here, and again it has redundancy, you can look at either one, but you're going to want to be focused on this. This is your primary, what you're looking at most of the time. I'm looking, once this is captured, and again we might want to sync, probably should have synced our heading bug there. Localizes now we can just sit back and we'll just fly right, we're looking at our decision height, having that burned into our brain, and thinking about the missed approach procedure. Our missed approach, we're already set up, we want to stay ahead of the airplane. We already have a missed approach bugged into there, because we know our missed approach altitude is 2,500 feet. And again, remember, when you're doing a glide slope, it's not going to hold that altitude once it says glide slope here. That's why it's important to understand what you see here. It's not going to hold the altitude anymore. As soon as it captures the glide slope, you can changing that heading. And that's where altitude's different than the heading bug, because when you change the altitude selector, you change this number. Once it says glide slope, it's not going to. That doesn't do anything. It's going to just, it's just going to bug that next altitude. You have to tell it how to get to that. You're just going to fly down the glide slope now. So is that clear? I think I didn't make that very clear.
One thing this doesn't seem to do for you is tell you when you're approaching decision height.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. This is a very good point. Now, difference between flying a precision approach, if you're flying, and I'm going to get to that in the next slide. But I'm going to bring this up now, and I'm going to make the point on the next one. We're going to do a non-precision approach on the next set of slides. When you do a decision, when you do a ILS approach or GPS with LPV, so if you're doing that, what you bug here is your missed approach altitude. So the airplane has no way, most of the time when you're flying with this autopilot, it captures the altitude. But this is really, as an IFR pilot, you have to remember is that. So now, your airplane, no airplane, a jet or anything that I've flown, has any way of stopping at the decision height. That's something that you have to do if you're flying a precision approach. So you put your missed approach altitude in there, and your main thing is you're making sure that the airplane's flying the IL, making sure it's flying the glide slope, making sure it's staying on the localizer, and you're watching that, and you're calling out 500, 400, 300, 200, 100 to minimums. And when that thing gets to minimum, as you're coming 50 feet to minimums, you don't see that runway. You have to tell that airplane to start pitching up. So you get to minimums, you put the power in, you press the go around button, and it pitches up and does that. And on a non-precision approach, you can keep stepping it down by putting your next altitude in, and then telling the airplane to go down with a vertical speed. Then it stops at that altitude. Then you get to your next fix, and then you tell it what your next altitude is. And then you can tell it what your final, whatever the minimums are for the non-precision approach. You can have it hold, the autopilot will hold that altitude. You can fly along, wait till you get to your missed approach point, and then go around. So the procedure is different. Like I said, the airplane will fly right into the ground on the precision approach, whereas it'll stop on a non-precision approach. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. The precision approach is easier to fly, but non-precision approach, it won't run you into the ground.
But on non-precision, if you hit the go-around, then you got to change the altitude because it's not going to...
Right, yeah, in other words, yes, that is the thing. So obviously it'll pitch up because it's not going to hold an altitude. You can hit the, you're flying along, getting to the missed approach altitude. No, but once it captures the altitude, that's the other point. Once it captures the altitude, you can, once you get to the final lowest altitude, say the minimums, I don't know what the minimums are, 500, 600 feet for a localizer or whatever. So you set it for 600 feet. Then, or it's probably higher than that, but 600 feet. So once it captures 600 feet, now you can put your missed approach altitude in, or your altitude for your whatever, like if it's 2,500 feet. It holds that, you fly to your missed approach point, you don't see the runway, now you do your go-around procedure and it'll pitch up, and you got to tell it how to fly, indicated airspeed again, and it'll capture that altitude and fly the missed approach procedure. Because remember, that's in the box.
So it knows if you're flying the localizer that you can change the altitude and it'll hold that minimum altitude until you hit the go-around?
It'll, yeah. So the final, but you only do that until you get to your final altitude.
Right.
Say, just for example, say you got to hold 2,000, 1,500. So you fly along to 2,000, you get to a fix. Okay, so now you put 1,000 feet in, vertical speed down. Goes down to 1,000. Holds 1,000, you get to another point. You put 500 in, hit vertical speed, spin the wheel down to 500 feet, it goes down to 500. Now, 500 is your final altitude. Now you're waiting to get to missed approach point. So now, from the time you've captured 500 feet, the time you get to the missed approach point, it gives you some time to put 2,500 in. Now you get to your missed approach point, don't see the runway, then you do. I'm going to talk about the go-around procedure because it's a little bit involved.
Okay.
All right, that's good questions though. Let's see, we're still on the glide slope here.
There's your min speed.
Oh yeah, we hit min speed there at one point. Yeah. If you get too slow, basically what happens is if you're on the glide slope and for some reason you're getting a little bit of sink, the thing starts pitching up. If you're flying like 80, which happened to in this point here, and I don't know, we got into some sink, but we didn't hit the throttle. You'll get min speed. And again, we're right. This thing does a great job. I mean, we were just watching it do that. Look at that. I can't fly that good. This is just more pictures. I don't know what this is. I guess this is a little video of it. That's not good. Now we're doing a localizer approach. Yeah. So again, we're in heading, and now, notice it doesn't say glide path over here, so we've pressed nav button instead of the approach button. Okay. And that's blurry. So we're just getting vectored again. See how this has, we're going outbound now. So see how it has a, what happens is the course is to our right, but it has correct sensing. If you would be, if you have the regular OBS before you had this, it would be reverse sensing. You would have to turn left to go right. Yeah. Again, okay, so now it says localize. Notice there's no GP over here. We're just going to we press the nav button because the glide slope's out, for example. We're just going to do a localizer approach. Again, we have green needles and no GP, altitude. Now we're going to do what I just talked about with stepping down. Now we're going to go, our next altitude was 2,100. We bugged 2,100. Altitude select, vertical speed at 400 feet a minute. Localizer is captured. Still 400, that's blurry. Our next altitude now we bugged was 1,000 feet. Vertical speed at 500. Altitude select. It's just another picture. Okay. That was a bird I saw. Okay.
Thanks for that, Brian. That was really good.
Okay, so
That's right.
let's talk a little bit about
precision approach for you. Real close attention to those instruments.
Well, that bird, yeah.
Yes, we're almost done.
So
So we're going to
comfortable
talk
with that
about
already, didn't you?
let's talk about when you get to. I wish I would have had some shots of just it's pretty much the same as a takeoff. But just say, for instance, the ILS. We can go through a couple of scenarios here. So the first thing you're always going to want to do so you get to your decision height and you don't see the runway. The first thing with this is you're going to want to do is you're going to want to practice this. My suggestion is, and this is the way it's done in any type of professional flying, is you sit in the cockpit. So you can actually sit in the cockpit and develop yourself a flow. Now this is sort of what I came up with. If you don't like it, but make sure these are the steps that need to be done. What order you do it in. If you like to put the flaps up before that, I mean, that may be a little bit late. I've thought about it for a while. And it's sort of what I think is the best for me. But these are the steps that need to be done for at least for an iOS missed approach. It's a little bit easier for a GPS approach because if you don't have LPV, because you don't have to switch the mode, you don't have to go from VLOC to GPS, because normally fixes are a GPS fix, you know, but they can be because they're already in your GPS, your mixed approach fixes. So let's go through this a little bit. Let's think about this. Okay, so here we're at our decision height. Here, so we're at our decision height. Okay, so then here's the runway, and so we don't see the runway. So what's the first thing you want to do? Is you want to power up, as John Toomey always said, power up, pitch up, clean up. So, but in this case here, you know, there's some other things that need to be done too. So you do need to get the power on first. You want to make sure that the power is on there, and then the way the way the airplane gets pitched up is you press the go around button. As soon as you hit that, then the autopilot, you're just watching the airplane now, making sure, again, you're making sure the flight director and the command bars come up. So the command bars are going to come up first because obviously there's some inertia with the airplane. So the command bars come up, and then you should see this airplane slowly come up, and to meet that. And then you're going to want to make sure that on the scoreboard you see GA. It's the go around. And then the airplane's actually pitching up your 7 degrees. So your eyes are going to want to go from, so the way I've sat in the cockpit already, just sat here and I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking at, so the first two things that make sense, because your go around button is right underneath the second Garmin 430. So you're pushing the throttle up, because you don't want to make your sequences, whenever you're thinking of a flow, you don't want to make them scattered. You know, go over here, you sort of want to make it so it's nice, it makes a nice even, you know, you don't want to be switching back and forth as much. So the throttle and pressing the go-around button makes sense because they're only this far apart in the airplane. And then you're going to want to, and in your eyes, you're going to go from there up to your eyes up to the scoreboard for go-around mode. So GA is pitching up 7 degrees. You're going to want to hit report the missed approach. And then, so you've got the airplane climbing. You see that it's climbing, and you've reported we're going around. The main thing is, again, is you don't run the airplane into the ground, so that's what you want to take care of first. And we reported the missed approach. Now you're going to want to make sure that the airplane is just going to fly straight. But if you're doing an iOS 1.3 here or someplace, you want to make sure you don't want to take too much time because you've got to have the airplane turn because there might be a mountain in front of you. So then the next thing to do is press the VLOCs. So normally, and you will have briefed your missed approach before you've done this. So you're making sure that most approaches nowadays have GPS fixes. In other words, it's going to turn, the airplane's going to turn to a certain heading, and you know, the GPS has all that programmed into it. So you're going to want to go from VLOC, because remember you were on VLOC to fly the iOS. Now you want the airplane to follow the GPS, to follow the missed approach procedure. So you're going to press the CDI button. It's going to come up here, press the CDI button, and you have to move suspense whenever you get to the, as you know, when you do approaches, it eventually gets